Rachel Maddow, Blowout, Corrupted Democracy, Rogue State Russia, and the Richest, Most Destructive Industry on Earth. Prepare to be taken on a journey through the world of oil and gas, and the significant impact this industry has on global politics, economics, and the environment. In Blowout, Rachel Maddow explores the history of the oil industry, its key players, and the global consequences of its operations. This summary will delve into the complex and fascinating world of oil, the birth of fracking and its subsequent environmental and public health impacts, the corruption and political power plays both within the United States and on a global scale, and how Russia's involvement in the energy industry led to its interference in U.S. politics.
From humble beginnings to oil dominance. Our journey begins with the birth of the oil industry in 1859 on a Pennsylvania farm, where Edwin Drake and his assistant, Uncle Billy Smith, discovered rock oil after drilling 69.5 feet underground. This momentous event triggered the rise of a global powerhouse. John D. Rockefeller played a central role in shaping the industry through the creation of Standard Oil and his infamously ruthless business practices. Despite the 1911 antitrust lawsuit breaking up Rockefeller's monopoly, his wealth only increased, and he imparted a lasting legacy of meticulous cost management to the sector. In 1859, Edwin Drake and Uncle Billy Smith launched the oil industry from a modest Pennsylvania farm, drilling into the earth and uncovering rock oil. By 2019, oil production reached an astonishing 90 million barrels per day. The driving force behind this transformation was the ambitious and relentless entrepreneur, John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller's Standard Oil enterprise rapidly dominated the market. Throughout his first 20 years, he ruthlessly acquired competing businesses, ultimately owning every major refinery in the United States. Other tycoons, like Andrew Carnegie and Philip Armour, also built monopolies in the steel and meat industries. However, none compared to the wealth amassed in oil. Political influence became just another business expense for Rockefeller, whose fortune peaked at an estimated $305 billion in 2006 dollars. The 1911 Supreme Court antitrust ruling sought to dismantle Standard Oil's monopoly on the grounds of unjust practices. Ironically, the outcome only accelerated Rockefeller's wealth accumulation. Although his empire was divided into smaller businesses, he retained ownership and thrived in the new landscape. Beyond his vast fortune, Rockefeller left an indelible mark on the oil industry by emphasizing the importance of stringent cost control. He meticulously monitored inventory, ensuring that every purchase was necessary and fully utilized. This philosophy of minimizing operational expenses drives the industry's success to this day. Nukes unleashed for energy. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the United States faced an energy crisis as oil supplies decreased and costs soared. Oil companies turned to natural gas, specifically trapped under deep layers of solid rock, which required fracking to release. To accelerate this process, the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, joined forces with Austral Oil Company to use nuclear bombs as an unconventional method for extracting natural gas. Despite initial success, nuclear fracking proved to be economically and environmentally unsustainable, leading to its abandonment. As oil supplies in the United States dwindled and costs skyrocketed in the late 1960s and 1970s, oil companies shifted their focus toward natural gas reserves. They aimed to extract gas buried under layers of solid rock, a process involving the creation of fissures or fractures in rock to release the trapped gas, called fracking. The Rocky Mountains alone held an estimated 317 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, a plentiful supply for the country. Austral Oil Company attempted to tap these vast gas reserves in Rulison Field, Colorado, but faced numerous challenges. This prompted the intervention of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, which possessed a large arsenal of nuclear weapons. Project Plowshare, a program dedicated to exploring peaceful uses of nuclear bombs, proposed the idea of joining forces with Austral Oil to utilize atomic energy for fracking, as it might be more efficient than traditional drilling methods. On September 10, 1969, Project Tillerson came to fruition with the detonation of a 40-kiloton nuclear bomb 8,426 feet below ground, creating a cavity 300 feet high and 152 feet wide. This endeavor effectively stimulated 10 years' worth of production in Tillerson field. However, the released gas was mildly radioactive, containing krypton-85 and tritium, with the exact tritium amount unclear due to the lack of proper measuring devices. In the following years, 2 more tests with even more powerful bombs were conducted, but nuclear fracking never became commercially viable. The method was not just expensive but also yielded insufficient quantities of gas. Between the 1970s and early 1990s, no one managed to develop a commercially feasible technique to extract deep underground gas. Finally, in the late 1990s, George Mitchell succeeded in creating a cost-effective method, marking the end of nuclear fracking's potential but cementing the future of efficient natural gas extraction. The Slickwater Revolution. In the late 1990s, the oil and gas industry largely abandoned fracking due to its inability to access valuable natural gas trapped within shale formations. A major breakthrough occurred when George Mitchell, founder of Mitchell Energy and Development Corporation, created the fracking fluid known as slickwater. This fluid enabled successful hydraulic fracturing, revolutionizing the industry. However, the exact composition of the fracking fluid remains a well-guarded trade secret, raising concerns about toxicity and environmental contamination. With millions of gallons of slickwater being used in fracking, the resulting wastewater, which sometimes contains dangerous substances, poses risks to the surrounding environment and communities. As the industry continues to profit from this technological advancement, questions regarding proper waste disposal and safety measures must be addressed to prevent hazardous consequences. Lessons from Deepwater Horizon. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010, resulting in extensive environmental damage, was a preventable disaster that showed the industry's unpreparedness for major oil spills. A series of missteps, such as bad decision-making and neglect, contributed to the accident, and the subsequent ineffective efforts to contain the spill exemplified the industry's critical need for better prevention and response strategies. The Deepwater Horizon tragedy caught the world's gaze in April 2010, when a calamitous offshore oil rig explosion led to 11 workers missing and presumed dead, spilling nearly 5 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. While it may have seemed like a unique, isolated occurrence, oil spills aren't uncommon, particularly in the Niger Delta, where a 2006 report revealed 546 million gallons of oil had leaked in the past 50 years. ExxonMobil, notorious for its history of oil spills, including the 1989 Valdez disaster in Alaska, was called upon by the U.S. government to assist BP in dealing with the Deepwater Horizon crisis. With a 580-page spill response plan in place, one might assume the corporation was well equipped for such challenges. However, as events unfolded, it became clear that none of the measures suggested were effective in containing the spill. Methods like containment domes were unsuccessful, and the introduction of hundreds of thousands of gallons of chemical dispersants only added to the problem, causing nausea among cleanup workers. In addition, the oil industry refused to disclose the ingredients of said dispersants, raising further concerns about their safety and effectiveness. During a June 2010 congressional subcommittee meeting, Congressman Ed Markey expressed frustration at the industry's inability to execute a practical emergency response plan. ExxonMobil's CEO, Rex Tillerson, admitted in that meeting that they were ill-equipped to manage significant spills, stating, "That's why the emphasis is always on preventing these things from occurring." The investigation into the Deepwater Horizon incident revealed that it was indeed preventable. Critical factors contributing to the disaster included the use of faulty cement to seal the well, inadequate monitoring and control of pressure, and dysfunctional backup systems. What's more, it was discovered that individuals from top to bottom were implicated in taking shortcuts to save time and money. The lesson from Deepwater Horizon is clear: the oil industry must prioritize effective prevention measures and invest in developing reliable response strategies to avoid future tragedies on this scale. Otherwise, the consequences may prove disastrous not only to the affected communities but to the environment as a whole. Oklahoma's fracking dilemma. In the pursuit of profits and riches, Oklahoma's fracking operations have left the state in an economic and public health crisis. Despite making billions for people like Chesapeake Energy's Aubrey McClendon and oil tycoon Harold Hamm, state revenues from oil and gas production have plummeted, causing school funding and infrastructure to suffer. Furthermore, despite strong evidence that fracking activities have led to damaging earthquakes, powerful industry players continue to hinder the dissemination of such information and resist tax increase proposals that could alleviate the state's financial burdens. During the early 2000s, the oil industry saw a boom in fracking operations with the potential to unlock vast quantities of natural gas. Oklahoma was one of the states that experienced this boom, with some Oklahomans becoming billionaires as a result. However, as the wealthy profited, the state plunged into an economic and public health crisis. A direct consequence of the rapidly expanding industry was the decline in state revenue from taxes related to oil and gas production between 2008 and 2013, which fell from $1.14 billion to $529 million during that period. This slump in revenue affected Oklahoma's education system as teachers became the third lowest paid in the country, and numerous public schools had to resort to 4-day weeks due to the state's inability to fund a full 5 days. In addition to the struggling education system, Oklahoma's infrastructure also deteriorated, with new schools built so poorly that they could not protect children from the state's frequent tornadoes. Despite the accumulating problems and ongoing protests from families and teachers, oil and gas industry lobbyists continued fighting to keep state production tax rates at a mere 1 or 2%. Industry leaders claimed that even a small increase would drive business away, despite drilling occurring in states with tax rates of 10 or 12%. Adding to the concerns, earthquakes with magnitudes exceeding 5.0 on the Richter scale have been scientifically linked to fracking activities in Oklahoma. However, powerful industry figures, such as oil tycoon Harold Hamm, have gone to lengths to deny, suppress, and silence those discoveries, placing financial gain above the well-being of the people and the environment. The dark side of oil industry. Oil deals with corrupt governments like Equatorial Guinea are lucrative for corporations like ExxonMobil, even as social issues plague the impoverished populace. ExxonMobil's association with the notoriously extravagant president, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, has raised eyebrows, but the company maintains it's not their role to dictate government spending. The nation's favorable tax policies and significant contribution to Exxon's global oil supply reinforce this status quo, despite international scrutiny. The oil industry often engages in transactions with questionable political figures around the globe in pursuit of maintaining low tax rates and increasing profits. One such example is ExxonMobil's dealings with the government of Equatorial Guinea, led by President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. Despite the country's high per capita income of $37,200, mainly from ExxonMobil deals, a shocking 77% of its population lives in poverty. From 1990 to 2007, as the oil revenue in Equatorial Guinea skyrocketed from $2.1 million to $3.9 billion, the nation's infant mortality rate increased from 10 to 12%, and clean water remained inaccessible to 57% of the population. Meanwhile, President Obiang and his extravagant son, Tillerson Nguema Obiang Mang, display overt displays of wealth. Tillerson, formerly holding a $60,000 annual post in the government, was accused of moving $75 million through U.S. banks for luxury purchases, including a Malibu estate, a private jet, designer wine glasses, and Michael Jackson memorabilia. Observers have criticized ExxonMobil for indirectly supporting the dismal conditions in Equatorial Guinea through their business relationship. The company, however, maintains it has no say in how the government spends its funds. In fact, as stated by an ExxonMobil spokesperson in 2005, they do not tell governments how to spend their money. One reason behind the lack of action on ExxonMobil's part may be linked to its advantageous partnership with President Obiang, considering Equatorial Guinea benefits from an industry-friendly tax environment and contributes 10% to Exxon's overall global oil supply. Therefore, rocking the boat is not a priority for ExxonMobil, even when faced with international scrutiny. Putin's grip on Russia's oil. It's a bothersome fact that global oil giant ExxonMobil has been closely involved with Russia's President Vladimir Putin and his ironclad control over the nation's oil supply. Post-USSR, various entrepreneurs attempted to initiate oil businesses, but only the Kremlin-owned entities have thrived. Companies like Gazprom and Rosneft are now in charge of Russia's natural gas and vast oil supplies, respectively. However, these organizations are consumed by corruption and wielded as political weapons by Putin, leading to massive losses. Russia essentially depends on its oil and gas industry, and without local competition and investments in research or alternative energy, Putin requires external support for projects, such as drilling in the Arctic. Conveniently for Putin, ExxonMobil's CEO Rex Tillerson obliges with minimal hesitation. Turbulent deals, Tillerson, Iraq and Russia. Rex Tillerson's quest for an oil deal with Iraqi Kurds in 2013 and 2014 threatened efforts to build a peaceful coalition among Iraq's Sunni, Shia, and Kurd populations. The Obama administration urged ExxonMobil to step back, but Tillerson pursued the lucrative deal. Similarly, Tillerson and Putin joined forces to start drilling in the Arctic, despite growing sanctions against Russia resulting from its annexation of Ukraine's Crimea. While the U.S. government ordered ExxonMobil to halt joint operations with Russian oil company Rosneft due to these sanctions, the two companies continued drilling and struck oil just in time. Meanwhile, Russia's Internet Research Agency began utilizing the Internet and social media to cause global disruption, including supporting Trump's 2016 presidential bid and Tillerson's appointment as U.S. Secretary of State. Oil interests fuel geopolitics. The power struggle behind Russia's support for Donald Trump's campaign is deeply rooted in the global oil industry. Russia's reliance on international aid in advancing its own oil interests faced severe hindrances due to Ukraine sanctions. The Trump administration's attempts at lifting these sanctions were foiled by the U.S. government, exemplifying democracy in action. While the almost realized Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative showed promise, Trump's withdrawal from it raised concerns. It is crucial to address the oil and gas industry's role in geopolitical and environmental destruction and strive for greater corporate responsibility. Behind the curtain of Russia's support for Donald Trump's campaign lies an all-consuming link to the global oil industry. The debilitating effect of Ukraine's sanctions on Russia's oil industry expansion created an inherent dependence on international aid. This led to the notorious Trump Tower meeting in June 2016, where Russian representatives inquired about the possibility of Trump lifting those sanctions if elected. Simultaneously, the proposed Trump Tower in Moscow was stuck indefinitely due to these same restrictions. In his early presidency, Trump's efforts to lift the sanctions were swiftly blocked by an assertive U.S. government. Republican Senator John McCain and Democratic Senator Ben Cardin orchestrated a rapid response, successfully implementing legislation that fortified these sanctions. Despite frustration from both Trump and Secretary of State Tillerson, the overwhelming approval in both the Senate and the House left them with no choice but to comply. This episode serves as a beacon of hope, demonstrating the democratic system's potential to curb an industry leading to corruption, geopolitical imbalance, and environmental destruction. Nonetheless, further regulations are still needed to truly impact change. An almost successful example of such regulation was the U.S. joining the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, an international effort designed to ensure transparency in the dealings of the oil and gas industry. This decision stemmed from a disconcerting bipartisan Senate report, The Petroleum and Poverty Paradox, assessing U.S. and international community efforts to fight the resource curse. Yet, early in his presidency, Trump withdrew the United States from the EITI, dampening the prospects for increased corporate responsibility. The oil and gas industry plays a crucial role in inciting geopolitical and environmental devastation. The time has come for this incredibly lucrative industry to be held accountable and make amends for its actions. The fate of our world's balance depends on it.
In Blowout, Rachel Maddow sheds light on the far-reaching effects of the oil and gas industry, from its origins to modern-day controversies. The summary explores the legacy of John D. Rockefeller, the risks posed by fracking, and how lax regulations have led to disastrous consequences. It reveals the industry's role in political corruption and support of oppressive regimes, including dealings with Russia's Vladimir Putin. The book also highlights the power that the industry possesses and the potential for significant reforms to hold it accountable and mitigate environmental and political destruction. To ensure a sustainable future, it is essential to address the significant global consequences of the oil and gas industry.